Neuromarketing, the New Science of Persuasion. This is the second in a series of thought leadership webinars brought to you by Digitek and BPO Media. I'm Amy Weiss from BPO Media, which publishes the Imaging Channel, a resource for the managed print and imaging industry, and Workflow, which is a resource for the business process automation and content management industry. We're very excited to bring you this webcast today. I just have a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn this over to our speakers. If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen at any point during this webcast. If you want to maximize the image on your screen, you can hover over the top right corner of the slide until you see a box with 4 arrows. If you missed any part of this webinar today or you want to replay it, an archive will be made available and we'll be emailing that link to all registered attendees. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Digitek, for this webinar. And with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Aaron Dick.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone for joining the call today. The Digitek Thought Leadership Webinar Series features the hottest growth topics in the imaging industry today. Every month, you'll hear from guest speakers, subject matter experts who have thought-provoking ideas and suggestions focused on helping you grow your business. Today's presentation, I'm super excited to hear. It's called Neuromarketing, the New Science of Persuasion. This presentation has been given to over 100,000 executives worldwide and will help you understand how different marketing stimuli affects the human brain. Our thought leader today is Dr. Christophe Morin, CEO and co-founder of SalesBrain. Dr. Morin has more than 30 years of marketing and business development experience. He's passionate about understanding and predicting customer behavior using neuroscience. Dr. Morin, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to learn more about this topic.
Thank you, Aaron, and welcome to everybody for about a 30-minute high-pace discussion with my screen at this point, but hopefully with your own brains. I realize that attending talks through a webinar can be challenging, and so I use visuals that are designed to stimulate your brain throughout. I am a media psychologist. Often when I say that, people look at me and ask, what is this really? We live in a world in which we are constantly bombarded with messages that are attempting to grab our attention, to convince us that we need to take action. And unfortunately, out of the thousands and thousands of messages that are trying to do that, only a few succeed. And the reasons they succeed is because they have special properties that make them brain-friendly. So the shortest definition of what neuromarketing is, for those of you who've never heard of it, is quite simple. I look at the effectiveness of your websites, of your ads, of your sales pitches from the perspective of your customers' brains. What was just an idea about 12 years ago has become a vibrant field. And the field is because we need to go much deeper in our understanding of what goes on in customers' heads. I've been conducting classical research for nearly 30 years, and there are simply limits to what you can expect people tell you. I was interested in going beyond those limits, and the only way I could do that is by specifically looking at brain responses. I don't want to turn you into neuroscientists in 30 minutes, but I want to give you an idea of the powerful insights that can be gained through the use of neuroscience. Now, have I found the buy buttons in the brain? Not as simple as it may be. What I have and others have been able to explain is what goes on in given situations that we know are essential to increase your probability to grab attention, to convince, or even sell. The field of neuroscience, of course, is not new to many of you. But do you know that nearly 90% of what we know today on the brain is not even 10 years old? It was just a matter of time before this vast amount of knowledge on our brains would begin to spill on other disciplines such as marketing, advertising, communication. So neuromarketing is not fad. It's not something that will come and go. It's really a natural, I would like to say, a scientific evolution of marketing as you know it today. To help you understand how we collect information from people's brains directly, I'm going to discuss very briefly some of the techniques. We go as far in the context of academic research as manipulating chemicals directly in people's brains. This is a study that I conducted with my friend and scientific partner, Dr. Paul Zak. And in this study, we in fact had students use a nose spray that would increase their level of oxytocin. Of course, they didn't know that, but after watching ads that were calling for their generosity, we were able to identify that elevated state of oxytocin would indeed correlate to donation and even purchases. The point of this is not obviously to acquire nose spray, to artificially and illegally influence your customers' brains, to consider that oxytocin is in fact a known neurochemical hormone that is also correlated with states of trust, of empathy, of love. All of this to say and suggest that when your customers truly experience empathy, love, and trust with your brand, it actually has the power to chemically change their brains, and those chemicals ultimately influence their ability to make buying decisions. This, by the way, was published in a paper that you can find on PLOS under the title Oxytocin Increases the Influence of Public Service Announcements. We do studies that involve decoding facial expressions. What was once the field of a few gurus that could read the meaning of muscle, expressions on the face is now a technology field. We can use software to decode facial expressions real time. And that gives us the ability to reveal 7 key expressions that are essential to understand how people respond emotionally in front of advertising. We do analysis of voice. We have the ability through the decoding of sound waves to reveal emotions such as cognitive effort, stress, anxiety, excitement. All of these emotions are not necessarily easy or obvious in what people say, but they are revealed in how they say it. Of course, we do eye tracking studies that have provided enormous information on the visual process by which we pay attention initially in the first 5 seconds, and ultimately by guiding our eyes to certain areas of the screen. It is important to recognize that while we think we control our visual attention, the evidence suggests that it is largely driven by primal mechanisms that are going to, below your level of consciousness, orient your attention in a particular direction. We do studies that monitor people's biometric activity, heart rates, skin conduction, and we're able to track second by second the response to these biometric dimensions of any kind of advertising. The purpose of all of this, of course, is once again to use brain data to monitor attention, cognitive effort. This is another technology that has been widely used to monitor brain activity on the surface of the brain. So as you can see, even the functional MRI that you may be familiar with in a clinical context is sometimes used to reveal which areas in the brain are activated. And of course, it is our job as media neuroscientists to use this information ethically, appropriately, to gain more insights into why people get excited about a particular offer or why they may not. The relative difference between those two scans indicates that sometimes ads have different and profound changes in people's brains that it is our job to explain. We do this, of course, in the context of conducting ethical research, and we always want to make sure that the subjects are not harmed, the data is protected. and that neuromarketing is not used for campaigns that are targeting vulnerable consumers. So the subject of ethics is important, and I do teach this particular aspect at my university, Fielded Graded University. You may wonder if it's really expensive to conduct neuromarketing research. Well, it is not today, because you're getting some really profound insights with this particular webinar at no cost to you other than your time, which actually, according to your brain, is a very critical spending. So we're going to continue and roll out what we have understood to be how persuasion really works. In the short time that I have today, I can't go through the entire model that we have now taught to over 100,000 executives around the world. Our book is available and will quickly help you navigate. But I'll do better than that. You don't even have to buy my book. You can, in fact, go to my website at SalesBrain.com and download the NeuroMap for free. What we have learned and discussed and presented in our books and webinars is what many of those books have confirmed, and that is we like to think of ourselves as rational beings, but we are by and large driven by primal emotional circuitries in our brain. We have been, in fact, receiving a lot of attention because our model is not unique from the perspective of persuasion. It has been endorsed by a lot of companies and institutions. This is just a sample of companies that we have served over the last 10 years. I want to give you an idea of truly how persuasion works. And to do that, all I need to do is help you realize that the brain has evolved over millions of years. And we don't have one brain. We actually have three. The newest part of your operating system, we can call it Windows 10, is in fact on the top of your brain, while the oldest, more primitive part is on the bottom. What's really important to understand is it is extremely difficult to engage the brain for the purpose of influencing or persuading by appealing to the new brain first. I'm sure you all have created messages that seem logically articulated. You're using language, which of course we all believe has been used for hundreds of thousands of years, when in fact we've operated the decoding of language for less than 7,000 years. And you fail to engage by seeking to attract the new brain first. Our research has actually found that the messages that work best in the brain are those that attract the primal areas first, those areas that do not understand any language but the emotional, visual, and intuitive language that we have used for millions of years. So in our research, which has been largely supported by this very seminal book from Daniel Kahneman, is based on this double speed ways of looking at the brain. We have a brain that is extremely fast, not terribly sophisticated, that Daniel Kahneman calls System 1. And we have the more evolved, more rational, thinking, cognitively driven brain called System 2. And one system dominates all the time. It is upon that recognition that you can begin a progression in your ability to persuade. And on this chart, or this slide, you see the massive differences that exist between System 1 and System 2, including, for instance, that System 1 doesn't understand the concept of time. If you want to appeal to System 1, it is very much like appealing to a child's brain. It's all about the now. It's all about proving in the now that your value proposition is real and can deliver benefits that matter to System 1, which in essence are all about me rather than your history or your ability to solve complicated issues. And we'll come back to that by having a more concrete persuasion model, which we've identified only needs to have 6 buttons. Indeed, what stimulates the reptilian brain or System 1? These 6 ways by which you can communicate, and we're going to go through them one by one. System 1, or the reptilian brain, is extremely self-centered. What does that mean? Well, have you noticed how many people use their smartphones to create pictures of themselves? We love the ability to be the center of a situation, and that is driven by our need to survive. When you begin your presentation through corporate overviews and sections on your presentations that only talk about your business, you're typically disconnecting from that self-centeredness. It is no surprise, at least to me, that the most influential word in English is actually the word you. Anytime you start a sentence using the word you by looking at someone you're talking to or interacting to, you're in fact appealing to their self-centeredness. Contrast is a second stimulus to your ability to influence. You know, in the brain, contrast is the language by which we make decisions at the speed of System 1. It is upon this simple binary system that we determine the degree to which we want to go or interact with a situation, or we want to get away from it. You cannot win when you suggest to your customers that you are one of the many options they have. You have to persuade and convince by indicating that you are the best, or the first, or the only. It is what System 1 is begging you to do. We may pretend that we like options and choice. That's a System 2 position. We, in fact, hate it at the level of System 1. Moving on to tangible, you know, the brain is actually only 2% of our body mass, but it is burning nearly 20% of our entire energy. We do not aspire to spend a lot of cognitive energy to believe anything, which is why you need to present the evidence. And that evidence needs to be concrete, tangible, measurable. All those adjectives make it real in the present that what you're talking about is happening, not will happen. It is happening now, and it is only upon making your message tangible, concrete, proven, that you can begin the persuasion process. Moving on to beginning and end, there's a very important law that pertains to how we pay attention and retention. For many decades, scientists would assume that a lot of that law is an inverted line, when in fact it's actually a U-shaped curve. And as you begin to realize the structure of this particular presentation, one that you may be doing in a corporate video or face-to-face, is not ideal. You cannot miss the critical beginning and end points with generalities about your business or a message that is centered on your business instead of centered on your customers. So at SalesBrain, we say don't spray and pray. Don't identify 10 reasons why people should buy from you. Identify a maximum of 3, which we call your claims, and make sure you hijack at the beginning of your message, be it a 10 to 12 minute presentation or a 30-second commercial, hijack the beginning of that event through a piece of information, a potential threat or challenge that is relevant to System 1. System 1 has the priority to keep you alive. System 1 is scanning the world for threats and challenges. Typically, what you are offering will have the capacity to eliminate such a threat or challenge highlighted at the beginning. As David Ogilvy says, selling is easy. All you need to do is light a fire under people's chair and present the extinguisher. Well, the grabber is lighting that fire. The claims are the 3 compelling benefits of your extinguisher that make it the best extinguisher on the market. And we recommend the close to be simply a repetition of everything you just said. We need repetition. Our brain does not have a lot of intention, frankly, or desire to remember much. And it is upon a clean architecture of your narrative outline that you can expect the message to be effective. Finally, the last couple are probably one you have seen before, but I want to give, I guess, a more biological or at least neurobiological description around those 2 qualities. We are, of course, extremely visual in the way we process stimuli, especially at the level of System 1. In the System 1 brain, we in fact have the help of a little brain structure called the amygdala. And the amygdala is as small as an almond. There's two of them, and has the capacity to take over and not allow information to be processed in the higher layers of the brain in the cortex. Why? Because the priority for the amygdala, which is the priority of System 1, is I need to take action even if my action is a mistake or an error. And that decision is largely influenced by visual input. We are visual decision-making machines, and you need to leverage the capacity. Now, I've done a lot of research on visual effectiveness in public service announcement, and I can tell you that these techniques, for instance, to fight tobacco habits, or at least to discourage new smokers to take the bad habit, are way more effective than using text, which does not appeal to System 2 and is not considered visual. The last piece of this model is the importance of emotions. You see, for long, it has been, in a way, promoted in business circles that emotions are optional in sales messages or sales presentations. They're rarely optional in pure advertising. But I often see a lot of our clients that are in a business-to-business activity, and I assume many of you are, that that pretend that taking a message to an emotional dimension is risky. It doesn't fit the corporate culture. Well, I have news for you. Emotions are never an option. When you are on a mission to persuade, you have to deliberately plan and organize the use of emotional cocktails. And at SalesBrain, we recommend, in fact, an emotional lift that will start typically by the reenactment of negative emotions or states that are typically reawakening or reenacting what a fire would create: fear, potentially anger, potentially sadness, or certainly surprise. And of course, your message and your solution is supposed to lift or release that state of tension into anticipation, trust, and joy. So that particular journey emotionally is very powerful for the brain. We know actually emotions are necessary for us to make decisions, and they also improve retention. Now, you also are familiar with the fact that emotions are connected to facial expressions, back to the technique that I mentioned earlier, and our ability to now understand that these 7 faces are actually the same anywhere on this planet, corresponding to those particular emotions. Now, shocking, funny, the truth is this one ad won multiple awards because it wasn't just about presenting facts and numbers or stating what can be done using logical sentences. It is about capturing your attention visually and helping you experience an emotion. And that is exactly what our model would suggest. As you can see, those 6 are in some way intuitive, but it's very difficult to speak the language of the 6 stimuli unless you can address and respond to 3 very specific questions. We have 4 steps in our approach. The first 3 steps require answers to the questions that I will cover in the last section of this webinar. First and foremost, you need to identify those pains and frustrations that people are going to pay attention to, particularly using their System 1. You need to identify the 3 claims that I suggested was the best narrative structure of your message. You need to prove your message with the gain, and ultimately you need to deliver it visually and in ways that would trigger emotional cocktails. The diagnosis of the pain is quite essential. We find that in classical marketing, we always worry about what people want, what they need. But the most important aspect of what you need to determine once and for all is what they fear. When Domino's said, I want to be the most successful pizza company, they didn't worry too much about the pizza. They identified that not knowing when the pizza will show up is actually driving most buyers' decisions. The same is true of Starbucks. They do not think of themselves as a coffee delivery company. They actually know that they are a third place. They are providing an option for those people, and many of us, who do not always want to share their time between home and the office. When Uber decided to shake and revolutionize the way we take transportation, they focused on solving critical pains. the pain of knowing when the car and driver will show up, the pain of spending unnecessary time for a transaction that should take seconds once you're done. All of these pains have been lifted by a company that has nothing to do with being a taxi company, but eliminating the pains and nightmares that we have about going from point A to point B when we don't have our own vehicle. As you can see, you may think of yourself today as a service company, as a software company, as a technology company. That is what people want. What are the pains that they do not want to face? And the more you talk about the pain, the more you'll see your business thrive. Identifying your claims is challenging. It is much easier to spray and pray. We see our clients do this all the time. What's difficult is to ask your question, which in fact should be almost printed and available to all your customers. That question is, of course, why customers buy from us. And that book, in our experience, should only have 3 chapters. The 3 chapters and the titles of those chapters, of course, are your claims. I'm showing you this company, coincidentally has a shared name with Digitek, but is a different company, yet they are in the space that most of you are in today. And they used to tell me that they required a lot of time to explain their value proposition. Well, now they only need 10 seconds. We did this particular visual, which is effectively inviting people to realize that keeping your documents is silly, if not stupid. You cannot have access to your documents. But if you archive them digitally, you can still have access to them and be productive. The 3 claims, of course, are that you will regain efficiency now, control now, and money now. Notice we're not talking about the cloud, the internet, because frankly, at the level of System 1, none of that makes any sense. What we do understand, however, is the word now. Differentiating your claims is fundamental to the process of engaging with the brain. You do not want to go beyond 3, and it's a challenging process, but extremely profitable. The last step is what is effectively the gain that you provide, and the brain is expecting you to be very concrete. Show me the financial gain. Show me to which extent you're reducing risk. We call that the strategic gain. And or show me if you're going to make my life better. Are you going to make me healthier, less stress, more successful? We believe that any company should consider those 3 buckets of value first and foremost, and then simply present and organize the best proofs of the gain. It is our experience, and we produce a lot of those, you can see them on our website, that building customer stories, particularly on video, is the best way to influence and prove the gain of your value proposition. Why? Because you're only telling a story that has already happened. And if it has already happened, it is of great significance to System 1. If you're projecting everything onto the future, which is the last column here of our table, you're taking the risk of making it too System 2 and not as concrete. You can see many of those examples, by the way, on our website. So you see, once you've achieved the clarity of pain, claim, gain, you're ready to rock and roll. You're ready to crystallize and deliver your message, which we recommend should be highly visual and highly emotional. It is the conclusion of our webinar today. I helped you identify the significance and importance of making your message brain-friendly, and I gave you a recipe. I hope to see more interest driven from your visits to our website and or to our association, which is the Neuromarketing Science and Business Association. Thank you very much, Aaron, for inviting me.
Thank you, Dr. Morin. That was, wow, I learned a lot. That was really informative. 90% of what we know about the brain is only 10 years old, stood out for me in that. And obviously determining that pain paradox was really interesting. So a lot of great content. I appreciate you taking the time to walk us through that. For everyone on the call, we'll put out some information on the webinar so you can access some of Dr. Morin's content. And for more information about our Thought Leadership webinar series and how Digitek is helping out our customers in business growth, please visit us at partnerpro.digitek.com. Thanks again, Dr. Morin.
Thank you.